Now, Singaporeans bade their final farewells today to former Cabinet Minister Othman Wok. Mr. Othman, one of the nation's first-generation leaders, died yesterday at the age of 92. And early this morning, many were at his house to pay their respects before the hearse carrying Mr. Othman's body made its way to Sultan Mosque at North Bridge Road around noon.
The sun hasn't fully risen, but preparations were already underway to lay to rest one of modern Singapore's founding fathers, Mr. Othman Wok. Outside his home along 18Apr Avenue in Bedok, a contingent of helpers were ready to assist the family of the late former Social Affairs Minister. Visitors have streamed in and out of Mr. Othman's home all morning. Now, I've also had a chance to speak with some residents who lived here, and they told me that neighbours have also had a chance to pay respects to the former cabinet minister. Encik Othman, as some fondly call him, will be dearly missed by those like former Senior Parliamentary Secretary Chan Chee Seng. Mr. Chan worked for Mr. Othman under the ruling People's Action Party as Singapore embarked on its nation-building journey post-independence.
I miss him. In fact, he's just like my brothers. We both together, in the party. And in fact, he swept, election in most of the election mass rallies, So I'm very proud to have a friend and a brother like that.
Among current political leaders who paid their respects were Trade and Industry Minister Lim Hng Kiang and Foreign Affairs Minister Vivian Balakrishnan. Ambassador-at-Large Chan Heng Chee called Mr. Othman a brave figure.
As a student, I had known of Mr. Othman Wok. He was a very important figure in our nationalist history, nationalist movement. He was one of the first Malay leaders with Yusof Ishak to move over to support the People's Action Party and build a nationalist movement there, a national movement.
Other leaders who paid their respects were Law and Home Affairs Minister K. Shanmugam and Health Minister Gan Kim Yong.
Now, from Mr. Othman's home in 18Apr Avenue, the procession moved east towards Sultan Mosque in central Singapore. The casket, draped with the state flag, was borne on a ceremonial gun carriage in honour of the man who contributed to building Singapore as a first-generation leader.
Just before noon, the casket carrying the body of Mr. Othman Wok departed for Sultan Mosque, a grand venue fit for a man of his stature. Family members and close friends accompanied the funeral cortege, including Minister in charge of Muslim Affairs, Dr. Yaakob Ibrahim.
Many members of the public showed up to pay their last respects here at the iconic Sultan Mosque. They come from all walks of life, young and old, and from different races, and all had good things to say about the late Mr. Othman Wok.
We have lost a very strong, committed leadership towards multiracialism, multiculturalism and meritocracy. Even when he was under attack by all the opponents, at a time when he was so critical, he stood firm in his belief. And I think Singapore has benefited from his sacrifice, his contribution.
He's a great man, humble, very, very humble, kind, accommodating in all our travels. Oh, he's just a good friend.
I'm still young at age, but I've heard stories from my parents and I've heard stories from just by browsing through history books that he is someone who contributed a lot, not only for the Muslim community but for the Singaporeans in general.
Inside, the mosque was packed. The last rites were carried out by Singapore Mufti Dr. Fatris Bakram, the country's highest Islamic authority. Cabinet members present included Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong, Home Affairs and Law Minister K. Shanmugam, Finance Minister Heng Swee Keat, and Labour Chief Chan Chun Sing. As part of the state-assisted funeral, the Singapore flag was draped over Mr. Othman's casket, with a crescent and stars lying over his head and close to his heart. This is the highest state honour that can be accorded to a deceased person. The Order of Nila Utama Second Class, which was awarded to Mr. Othman in 1983 for his contributions to Singapore, was also left with him. The coffin bearer party, Friends and family then braved the thundery showers to accompany the casket to the ceremonial gun carriage, where it then began its journey to the Choa Muslim Cemetery.
It wasn't just those who knew Mr. Othman who mourned, but the skies too opened up and poured as the procession continued from Sultan Mosque in central Singapore. The casket, draped with the state flag, was borne on the ceremonial gun carriage in honour of the man who contributed to building Singapore as a first-generation leader. From Sultan Mosque in the historic Kampong Glam area, the casket made its way to the west, along North Bridge Road, past North Boat Quay to River Valley Road, moving along Alexandra Road, Commonwealth Avenue West, and Clementi Avenue 6. It then entered the Pan Island Expressway, moving along Jalan Bahar before arriving at Mr. Othman's final resting place at Choa Muslim Cemetery. The road was wet and the journey long. But for those who accompanied Mr. Othman, every present moment to pay tribute to the pioneer was a moment to be cherished.
Following its journey to the cemetery, the casket was received by 9 officers from the Army, Navy, Air Force and Police Force. Family members, friends and politicians waited to bid a final farewell to one of Singapore's last pioneers.
Now, a memorial service for the late Mr. Othman Wok will be held at Victoria Concert Hall tomorrow from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. And roads around the area will be closed from 12 p.m. tomorrow, and they will reopen again at 2 a.m. on Thursday. Now, these are the roads that will be affected. Fullerton Road and Connaught Drive, St Andrews Road, which lies between Parliament Place and Coleman Street, will also be closed. Old Parliament Lane, Empress Place and Parliament Place will also be affected.